Hello, everybody. It looks like everyone's jumping in here. Welcome, welcome. We'll just give you all a few minutes to get in here, and then we'll start shortly. Hope everybody is nice and warm where they are because I think there's been some Arctic weather across everywhere right now. So yeah, if you want to let me know if it's plus or minus where you are. I will say that it's about minus, I think, like 10 degrees, maybe 18 degrees here on Northern Ontario in Canada, but I think that it gets warmer as you go south. So hopefully everybody is comfortable. And it looks like we still have people jumping in. I'm busy. Mhm. Oh, Northern Ontario too. Nice. Oh, and another Canadian, and that it's warmer in Alberta than here. That's funny. That doesn't happen. Illinois. Awesome. Love to see a good spread of people. I hope you're all excited for this session because I think it's going to be super interesting for us all. And I think I'll give it one more minute and we'll get started just because everybody's time is important here. Oh, the snow is gone in Texas. Well, that's really good. Did anyone else have that crazy ice? Like, wasn't there like a car that got frozen in ice somewhere like, from a water main break and then the deep freeze? Yeah. +6 in central Alberta. Oh, send that weather our way. New Orleans, 49 degrees. Awesome. Awesome. All right. Well, hello and welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for our Work of Design live webinar presented by Studio Designer. If you're new here, Studio Designer is the leading platform for your interior design business, helping designers manage projects, finances, and client relationships all in one place. We're here to simplify the business of design so you can focus on creating exceptional work. The Work of Design Live series brings you expert insights, real world strategies, and practical guidance to help you protect, grow, and strengthen your design business. I'm Helena Stevens, part of the Studio Designer team, and we're thrilled to welcome Wendy Estela, founder of Estela Law and Design Counsel. Wendy is a business attorney who has spent over 25 years serving hundreds of interior designers nationwide, from AD100 and L Decor A-list firms to the emerging studios. She specializes in contract drafting, negotiation strategy, and risk management tailored specifically to the realities of the design industry. She is also the founder of Design Counsel, the first legal education membership program exclusively for interior designers, providing attorney-drafted contract templates, direct access to legal guidance, and ongoing training to help designers protect their businesses and hold their ground with confidence, which is exactly what today's session is about. Beyond the contract, how to hold your ground when clients push back. We are tackling one of the most uncomfortable but inevitable parts of running a design business, and Wendy will walk us through real-world scenarios designers face every day. As always, we'll have a Q&A session at the end, so feel free to drop your Q&As in the Q&A box just at the bottom. So it's at that black bar, it says Q&A. If you throw them in the chat, I'll try to catch them later on, but just if we're connecting in there, I don't want to get a question lost. And if you need to step away at any point, no worries. The session is being recorded and will be shared with all registrants afterwards. And one other box is the resources box at the bottom. It does have links to the Design Counsel website and Wendy's profile and all of those pieces as well. So we are so excited to have you with us today, Wendy. So I will hand the camera over to you.
Great. Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you.
Awesome. Okay, so first of all, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I was here at 19 hours and it was such an awesome experience. I was speaking very quickly because I had two presentations jammed into one. This one's going to be a little slower pace. I want people to jump in and put questions or comments also in the chat because I think when we go through some of the things I'm going to talk about, they're going to resonate with you. So feel free to vent. Feel free to share your experience, ask questions. I will try to get to as many as possible, whether it's during the presentation or at the end. And let's just get started. So, oh, and by the way, Helena mentioned that I started Design Counsel, which is sort of like an offshoot of my legal practice. And at the end of the presentation, I'm going to share a discount code if anyone's interested for studio designer members. So I'll be sharing that. And even if you have to drop off early, you don't need to complete listen to me for an hour to get it. You could just have it. So hold on one second. Let me just figure out how to share and we'll get started. All right. Can everyone see my screen? Okay, I think that's yes. Okay, so let me just figure out how to get to the next slide. Okay, good. All right. So today's presentation is not just about the contract, it's about beyond the contract. And so I called it Design Contracts and Beyond, how to hold your ground when clients push back. And basically, what I want to talk about in a nutshell today is the question that one of my clients called me with yesterday, which was, Wendy, now that we finished this dispute, what can I put in my contract to make sure this never happens again? And unfortunately, I had to say to her, I can give you all this amazing language and you could have the perfect contract, but I can't guarantee to you that this will never happen again because this is the world we live in. It's a litigious world. People are unhinged. Feelings get hurt. People feel like they've been ripped off. People want to fight on principle. There are many reasons why the contract alone isn't going to shield you from everything. And quite frankly, if somebody wants to create a problem for you, they're going to find a way. So great. That's a great way to start the talk, right? So I'm going to teach you about the way that these people are, how they use the contract, how they use it as a sword, or how they're trying to be just difficult and come at you with their resources and attack. You're going to use your contract as a shield in most cases. It's very rare that you're going to be wanting to be the aggressor. The contract needs to be able to protect you, but there needs to be other things like the way you run your business, the way you talk to people, the way you manage a relationship. A combination of things is what's going to get you to the place of avoiding disputes altogether. But then when you do get to the inevitable dispute, we'll talk about how to actually deal with that. So the learning objectives today are to identify what I call the archetypes of bad faith interior design clients. And this is when I'm guessing the chat is going to start because I think you all know what this client looks like. We've all had a bad experience and these people, like the client, the pattern repeats. I see it all the time because I get the phone calls about the bad clients and it's just sort of like a cookie cutter situation. I want you to understand how to deal with this when it happens, okay? And how to use your really well-written contract strategically so that you can manage the client and avoid a lawsuit. I want you to understand how to craft your payment provisions so that they are not only clear, but they have you holding the money in most cases. And you'll hear me say later that the golden rule that I share is that the party that's holding the money almost always wins. And we'll go into what that means. And we're also going to talk about a termination for convenience provision and why that's critical in your contract. So in the past year, I've been talking about what I call the new transparency. And this is another theme that's going to run through today's discussion, which is in the past, transparency in the design business was, oh, I need to show the client all my pricing. They need to know what the markup is. They want to know what they're paying for. They want to know what they could buy it for. I don't like that. Okay. And not all designers do that. In fact, that's not really what the industry standard is or should be. The true best practice with pricing of product is to basically say, to be in a position that you could say, I set the pricing as the designer, I'm the retailer. Unfortunately, a lot of designers are kind of in a spectrum of what they do. So there are people starting out and they basically will give away their pricing in many situations. Other designers will say, I charge cost plus. Some designers will say, I charge My price, I charge less than retail, percentage off retail. And that, like I said, this other group of designers will say, I set the price and I'm not telling you what's behind that. Okay. But transparency in the past was around that. Now, because there is so much shopping of designers and just kind of like taking this industry and making it a commodity, like going around who charges what for what, I'm seeing a shift and I'm advocating for a shift to the what I call the new transparency. What that should be is that you as designers and the industry needs to be educating clients that designers do a lot more than just buy stuff and that there's more. There's an entire design relationship. The designer is an expert. They're providing a luxury service. They're providing a very specialized service. They're creating a space for you. They're not just creating a design and buying things and putting things in that space. It's a holistic service, not to mention all the expediting management, renovation management, coordination of vendors, contractors, all of it. And I think that in my experience, I'm seeing that the interior design clients out there are very confused as to what the industry is and what services are provided because their only experience is HGTV, as we know, or what it used to be, or whoever they worked with before you. So all designers are different. All designers work differently, even ever so differently. And if you're not educating your client on how you work and why the way that you work is okay, and the fact that you're allowed to make money with what you do, you're starting the problem there by not being transparent with the client. And to me, the transparency is about the fact that you are a business and you can make money because you're providing a valuable service. So you need to continue to set expectations with your contract, with your onboarding process, with your website, with everything you do. And you need to be able to make sure that you're comfortable communicating that directly with the client, to the point where at the end of your conversations with the client, you want to make sure that you're talking to them and you could say, do you understand how I'm compensated under this agreement? Do you understand that I make money on my design fees, on the products I'm selling, on my fees for coordinating this project, managing this project? I have a lot of value coming in from the photographs I get for this project, from your project. It's my portfolio rights. Those four things together are the deal that I get by agreeing to be the designer on your project. They need to know this from the get-go. They need to know from the jump. They need to know immediately that this is how you work and how you make money. And if they don't, this is really kind of the groundwork for the next few slides we're going to talk about. So I just actually went over this, the components of the design fee of what you're making, designer compensation. Okay. And your job, again, is not to get the client the lowest price. Again, there's misconceptions by this residential interior design clientele that you are there to shop with them, have fun, get them the best price, show them what they can go find online by themselves. They do not understand this industry. And another takeaway from me is that I've been to High Point, I've been to Design Edge, I've been to a lot of these conferences, and there's such great education and information. But what happens is you're in this world of other designers and other industry people, and a lot of things are almost like taken for granted. You get the business, and everyone around you gets the business. You understand it. The clients that come to you are wealthy, entitled, sophisticated. They're smart. And they're not going to admit to you that they don't understand your business or don't know it. They're going to act like they know more. So I see a big divide there. And when I'm presented with a dispute where my interior design client was just fired by a client, there is a huge education process that I have to go through with the client, the homeowner client's lawyer, because it's like a game of telephone. The lawyer heard from the client what they thought the expectation was under the contract. And then on my end, the designer told me what they communicated to their client, and the two lawyers get together and we have a totally different story of what was supposed to happen in that interior design residential agreement engagement. Okay. So I can't stress enough that open communication and really talking to your client, doing a page turn of the contract, making sure they're nodding their heads, understanding what they're getting and what they're paying for and what you are giving to them is understood. And you can't, this is where I say beyond the contract, you can't just rely on it being memorialized in your document because we all know that a lot of people don't read it. So you want them to read it, but more importantly, your goal is to make sure they understand it. So they have to understand you're a business, you're not their best friend. Um, you need stronger relationships with these clients. The contract does have to be good. Okay, none of that makes up for a bad contract. The other piece of the contract is that we need to make sure that all of your contracts, and I challenge you to do this when we're done with this webinar, go back and figure out every provision of your contract that says the client will or shall do something, the client will do this, the designer will do something. If they don't do that thing, now what? Because that's called a remedy. If they don't do something, you have a remedy as the designer. What's your remedy for each thing in the contract, each obligation of the client? If the remedy in your mind is, well, if they don't do that, I'm just going to sue them, or I could bring them to court, or my contract says that's not enough. You need to have a way to put leverage and pressure on them to do the thing that they said they're going to do when they sign that contract. And those are like the in-betweens. Like you don't want to have to resort to going to court to enforce your legally enforceable document. You want to have a remedy that gets you something without it being the extreme battle of court or arbitration. So my second disclaimer, I blew by the first one, which is this is not legal advice. Okay. This is the important one. I understand that the majority of homeowner clients are good and they mean well, and you have great experiences. However, the only ones I ever hear about are the nightmares. Okay. I get phone calls from designers who need help with problems. Nobody's calling me to help them with a happy client. And this presentation is totally focused on the clients that are the nightmares. They're the narcissists. They're the psychos. I don't even know the politically correct word for crazy, but they're the crazy ones. And it's strategies to deal with those situations. And I'm talking about a strategy from the minute you get the nasty letter that like makes your stomach turn. Okay. Whether it's from the client or from their lawyer. That's where this all begins, and the mindset you have to have from that moment of feeling sick to your stomach about what's about to happen. I want to help you with that. Okay. And also, disclaimer number 2, part 2, every good client has the potential to exhibit bad behavior. And on the flip side, we all say that these clients are emotional and all that, but so are all of you, and so am I. I mean, I'm a lawyer, but I get emotional about things. I'm a human. Okay, we all have the potential to be emotional, to have a bad day, to be snippy, or to communicate poorly. So keep that all in mind, because it's very tempting to be like, I don't have these problems with my clients because I have good clients. Well, every phone call I've gotten has been like, hey, these people were great in the beginning. Or I knew they were a little bit problematic, but they were different with me. So that's how you want to be thinking about this. All right. So I like to call these problem clients, like I call them archetypes of problem clients. Someday I'm going to write a book, because none of you can write a book like this because you'll never get business again. But I can write the book because everybody tells me about their problem clients. And I mean, we're talking about we'll talk about them. So they're happy and good at the outset. So part 1, the first one, the oversharer. And these are just 3. There's definitely more. And these 3 are all similar, but I just want to kind of walk through some fact patterns with each one. So the profile of this person, they're a lonely, wealthy client that treats you like their therapist or friend. This person, a lot of these wealthy people, they say, it's lonely at the top, right? I have found in many situations that these clients truly are lonely. They don't have a lot of friends, or they don't know who their friends are. And now you come in and you're like nobody else in their world. You're a problem solver. You want to help them. you're not taking anything from them except they're paying you, but they're used to that transactional dynamic. They're wealthy, but this is who they are. Okay. And they share their problems. And when they do that, they start to blur the boundaries. Now, I have found situations where the designer's happy that this person likes them so much because it's usually a very wealthy person. Okay. This is like a very wealthy person. And the designer will say to me, oh, money's no object with these people. I'm not worried about money, which is mistake number one, because these people are the tightest with their money. Okay. Again, this is like what I've seen consistently. So now you're picturing a situation where you got this oversharer, and now something happened in their life, and now they're getting weird. They pull back a little bit. Okay. And what happens? Something happens. The designer will call me and be like, I don't know what happened, but this person just kind of snapped. I don't know what happened. And now they're asking for all this money back. And I'm basically done with the project. I'm just waiting for things to be delivered. So why do they want all their money back? What did I do? Okay, so that fact pattern I've seen in the past 2 years at least 6 times from different designers. That exact fact pattern. Okay, sometimes it's more than 70% they want back. Sometimes they want, or no, they want the full refund at like basically done. Sometimes you're at 90% completion. They want all the money. I have one right now where it's done. It's a year after the work is done, and the client wants not just the whole amount, but then some, because they claim they had to hire a different designer and contractor to undo what the designer who they paid in full did. How is that fair? It's not. And the contract doesn't give the client any right to any of that. But did they still hire a lawyer to write a letter? Yes. So again, your contract can protect you to a certain point, but you can't, what do? Do you go to that lawyer and say, here's the contract, take your letter back? They don't. They still are pushing. They want something. Okay. So the lesson with this client, and we'll go into detail with all of these, the contract must establish the business relationship and the boundaries from day one. You write into your contract how you're going to communicate with these people, and you stick with it. So for example, if you say that I reserve the right to respond to text messages during business hours, or text messages are reserved for this type of thing. I'm not going to design over text. Or, again, the business hours, the method of communication is important. I like having contracts that say that if the designer feels that the communication is getting to the point where it's abusive, which unfortunately you have to write that in, designer will walk away from the contract. Okay. You figure out what the rules are for you. It's not just your business, it's you behind that business. You are a human and you don't deserve to be treated that way. And you deserve to have a work-life balance. So you create that boundary and you stick with it, you enforce it. You don't give any of these people an opening. You don't give them an inch because they take a yard. You don't give them the opening to come in and get what they want from you, which is your energy, your time. Okay. The contract, always, every contract has to include a strong termination clause. And that clause has to say that it says who gets what upon termination, meaning how much gets paid to designer if you terminate at each phase of the project. You think about every phase. What would you need to get back to be made whole? Okay. Or to be fairly compensated for completing that phase of the project, and maybe what you lost for not getting the rest of the project. And most importantly, what do you give to the client as a deliverable at the end of each phase? So, what does the client get to take? And that's different for everybody, because some designers will say, I'm not giving them anything because I'm the one I'm the one that's supposed to be installing this project. I don't want them to take everything and bring it to my competitor. Other designers don't care. They just want to get out of there and be done with the problem client. Okay. So that's another part of what you should be thinking about early on when you sign a client. And you can actually have something called a termination schedule. So for a huge project, you might say, if for some reason either of us has to part ways early, we don't anticipate it, but if it were to happen, this is exactly who gets what at each phase, because that really stipulates it up front. and there's no fighting. So for example, if the client thinks that you're giving them a design that they can take and execute elsewhere, but you don't think that, that needs to be captured. Or, if they expect all these CAD files and native documents and all of this at a certain phase, that needs to be stated, and you have to make sure you're getting compensated enough for those things. So you can create that. The most important thing in all of these contracts is the cash flow. You need to make sure that fees are non-refundable. And the non-refundable part is very strong when I'm fighting with another lawyer or having a productive discussion with another lawyer, because the minute you spend an hour doing the work, it's like you're doing the work. It doesn't matter if the client doesn't like it, you're doing the work unless you totally blew it. Okay. And I've yet to see a designer who didn't work professionally and really spend the hours they said. Those fees are non-refundable. There should not be a situation created that you have to give them back. And the final piece of this, and some of this will repeat throughout with all these different types of clients, you want to make sure there's no warranty, not just on the goods, but on your services. Because the remedy for a service issue, like, okay, it would say designer, I've seen this in contracts and I strike it every time. Designer will provide professional services at the level of a designer, providing similar services on another project, something like that, right? That language is creating a warranty for you. And if they claim and prove that you didn't provide those services at that level, the remedy for the client is for you to reperform the services. So you need to make sure that your contract warranty section says, not only do you just pass through manufacturer warranties, but there's no warranty on designer services. That's it. There's no rework of the services. Very important. Okay, another client type, and I'm going to move through these quickly. The control freak. So picture an executive who micromanages everything, wants the lowest price, wants to price match. They're texting you where they found something cheaper. They are screenshotting and Google image searching. The wife is there. She doesn't work. She's got her kids and she's got an eye for design. She loves it. She's going to manage the contractor. It's a huge house. There's no professionals there, but the executive and his wife are smart people, and you trust them because she runs a business and he's in Wall Street. Okay, so they must know what they're doing. The pattern: there's changes. They won't make decisions. They disappear for a few weeks because they're on vacation. Now, what happens? The project's delayed. Now the delays, that the delays are because of their indecision or they were unavailable. But what do? They say that they talked to the builder and the builder said the builder's waiting for something from the designer. And now there's this triangle of you, builder, and client. And in that triangle, I've yet to see the designer prevail because the builder is its own archetype. Okay. And they tend to be very aggressive type people. Designers tend to be, I know there are exceptions, tend to be more people pleasing. And then the homeowners tend to kind of align with the builder in most cases because the builder's in their house. Okay. And the contracting industry has a lot more known standards than the design industry. So there's just sort of like, this is how builders are. So when there's that triangle of a dispute, the risk and the blame starts to be shifted to the designer. So what do? Your contract, you have to educate your client about how you work with a builder. You have to educate the client that your value isn't bringing the lowest price. You have to establish the way that you communicate with the builder, the homeowner, how that's going to look. Are you going to be meeting weekly? How often are you going to meet? How often are you going to meet? The most important thing, and I learned this one recently, I'm starting to write this into any major renovation contract. You must get a written schedule from the contractor, and it needs to have durations and responsibility. So a Gantt chart, a chart that shows like this task is going to take this long, this is going to take this. These are the dates that I need something from the designer by. Because without something specific like that, you are basically shifting risk. Everyone's like this, blaming each other because everyone's contract, the designer's contract says we're not responsible for delays by you or the builder. The builder's contract says we're not responsible for delays by the designer or the homeowner or acts of God. Yours probably says that too. And the homeowner is just sitting there saying, well, one of you is responsible. And in that case, it's a jump ball, but it's always going against you. So it's always going to be the builder winning that, or most times in my experience. Okay. So you need to get that part clarified. Like, what are the actual dates you're committing to? And make sure the language about other people delaying you is clear. So, but the schedule is going to drive everything. And then the final part of this kind of situation is that you do have to have language in your contract that talks about shopping you being a breach, and it shifts responsibility for the items purchased by the client to the client. So remember when I was talking about not going to court for everything? If you have a client that's shopping you or who especially that scenario, let's stick with that. They're shopping you, they're buying things elsewhere. You spent time specifying it, picking it out, all of that. Now what? Are you going to fire the client or sue them? Those are kind of like the extreme remedies. Probably not. But the middle remedy here is that you're going to tell the client, well, I don't, this isn't allowed under the contract, but what has to happen now is that every time I touch that item, involve it in the design, move it, touch it, physically touch it, I have to charge hourly for that time because I wasn't involved with the procurement of that item. I have to verify you bought the right size, all of that. And then also you're going to say, you have full responsibility for that item. So if it arrives at your house and it's damaged, you cannot call me to fix it. And if you choose to do that, it's going to be at this rate or maybe even a little higher rate, like as a punishment. You don't need to tell them that, but you might say that, this is the rate for that type of work. So that's like a middle ground remedy because you're not going to just fire for everything. You're not going to just terminate. You have to have something in there that gives you a way to fix the problem, but also serves as a disincentive to them. So they don't want to do it. More times than not, when you have a client like this who's trying to shop you, they run out of steam. They get sick of it, or they do have a problem they encounter where they can't figure it out. And now they're like, you know what, you handle it. So those are important things. And sometimes if you communicate really well at the outset, the client will realize like, oh, I don't want to be bothered by that. You know how many items I'm going to have to buy? I'm just going to let you handle it. And I don't want responsibility for it. So, okay. So the displaced anger client, great couple, smooth project, designers getting closer with the wife's making the decisions. The husband now has a problem and he lost a bunch of money at work. So now what's happening? I didn't add this in there, but usually what happens is they don't have the money that they pretend that they have. So they present themselves as very wealthy. Now there's a setback. And guess what? The first thing to get cut is the wife's hobby, which is redesigning the second home. And now this wife is stressed out. And instead of being able to communicate with her husband, she's coming at you. And now you're like, what happened? And all of a sudden she hates everything you did. And you're like, what happened? She literally told me 2 days ago that she loved everything, but now I'm getting an email saying that everything has to change. And by the way, this happened last week to a designer I work with, who's also my very good friend. Okay. So she was so upset. She was crying. She's like, I feel like a failure. I swear I presented all of this. She loved it. And she was reading me the emails. I will say a couple of days later, she talked to the wife and the wife was like, yeah, my husband. And sure enough, it was this. And I said, I have a slide that covers this. So it's amazing. They all fit into one of these. So, what happens is this stress that these people experience in their life, you are now the scapegoat for it. And just an example of an attack from this slide is they could ask for the full refund. And if you don't give it, they're going to tell the whole neighborhood about you and what a bad job you did. Oh my God, what do you do? Okay. So again, your contract can protect you and can say, they're not entitled to get their money back. But if they're threatening to destroy your reputation, what do you do? This is outside of the contract. What do you do? So you want to have a good contract. The important thing in the contract is to have language that says, hey, in the event of a dispute between us, we're going to agree that during the dispute, we don't disparage each other, and we're going to try to work it out. And then what happens in my situation is I get it worked out for you. And then we sign a settlement agreement that replaces that language. It says, okay, forever and ever, we're not going to disparage each other. So we control it during the dispute. These clients, if they start writing a bad Google review or something like that, I can write a letter to their lawyer and say, take it down. That's very effective. And usually in that case, the lawyer will go back to their client and be like, hey, you're not going to get anything if you're acting like this. So it's effective to have that language in there. Other things that you have to do, you have to, in this situation where you've got the people like this, the decisions, and you want to document everything. You want to talk about, well, the wife said one thing and then, later the husband changed his mind, but document the day that the wife agreed to something. Your contract should say that one spouse is able to make decisions on behalf of the other. I see contracts that the designer requires both to be present for everything, which I think must be very difficult. Okay. Or both have to sign off on everything. I like to say that one has the ability to bind the other, and that's it. That person has the authority. And the other part about kind of the reputation, if you have your dispute being resolved outside of court, you can control the privacy. If your contract says that you're going to go to, state court or federal court or whatever court, that's a public record. You don't even want to be in a situation where you're named in a lawsuit. Anyone can Google it and look it up. If your contract says mediation or arbitration, those are ways to resolve privately outside of court. The ideal situation is arbitration, because arbitration is the one where you basically choose a private judge to look at everything and pick the winner. Mediation is a forced negotiation. So it's just forcing the parties to come together, but there's no one picking a winner or loser. So my recommendation is always to use binding arbitration. It's private, subject to confidentiality, and to use an arbitrator that is well-versed in construction and design contracts. I put that into my contract because you don't want some random judge that doesn't know these contracts, because they're confusing and the industry is confusing. And lawyers and judges cannot believe how much designers earn because they don't understand what you do. So skip the step of having to educate the other lawyer and the decision maker. Find an arbitrator that has demonstrated experience in these industries. I'm going to go past this quickly, okay, because you're going to get these slides, but this is a sample language, sample language of a provision for structuring and pricing of goods, just talking about, what you can say here. One thing I do want to point out, the third paragraph, I like to say, client acknowledges that designers' vendor relationships are governed by confidentiality obligations and vendor-specific requirements. Designer does not disclose and cannot provide wholesale pricing. Now, they're still going to push for this, but by saying that and just characterizing your trade relationships as being things that you've negotiated, those are your business deals, it starts to show them the level of professionalism in this industry. You are no different than if they went to a store. They wouldn't be asking the store manager how much the manager paid for something that's being sold. You need to emphasize that to them. So this is, again, client education, writing your contract in this manner. Okay. So again, I don't need to read the slide, but it shows that you are a storefront. And it's very important to make sure that the client knows that not only is it not your business practice to share vendor pricing, but it sets that expectation before the problem arises. And one side note to this, if you are a cost plus contractor, I don't like to slap anyone on the wrist. And I don't say you have to do it a certain way. This is your business. How you run it is your decision. Okay. But if you do like, oh, I charge a 30% markup or whatever you say, to me, the only issue I have that I like to point out with that is that you are creating what I call like an audit right for the client. Because if you're saying that you're charging them your price plus 30%, the minute you have a problem with the client, their lawyer knows that they're going to harass you a little bit just to kind of put pressure on you to resolve the issue. And they're going to say, okay, well, we need to see all of your vendor invoices to prove that you really did only charge cost plus 30%. And now you're stuck producing all of that. And if you do any other combination of things, like if you do like a discount off retail, retail is something that they can go find on their own. You don't need to produce as much as you do if you have to do cost plus and they're like auditing what you did. Termination for convenience. So I mentioned that before. Again, sample language. I'm not going to harp on it, but the one thing I do want to point out here is that typically the way this works is you've seen termination for cause and termination for convenience. Termination for cause means somebody did something wrong, contract's getting terminated. Termination for convenience means either party can exit at any point and everyone's getting paid, but you don't need to prove that somebody was bad and did something wrong. The reason I like termination for convenience is because you're already parting ways for whatever reason. You do not want to have assignment of blame as part of like the reason to exit, because now you're starting to like churn up bad feelings. So I'd much rather write a letter saying, dear client, designer has to terminate this agreement. It's already bad, okay, that you're terminating it. Per section 14, termination for convenience, we're giving you 14 days notice. We're going to give you XYZ. We're going to refund you this, or give you back your retainer or whatever. Thank you very much. That's all legal and okay. You don't have to say that we're terminating you because you're a bad person. We're terminating you because you're so abusive to our staff. You just have to terminate per section 14 or 10 or whatever of your contract. And what I say here is in the third paragraph, upon termination, designer will invoice for fees earned, expenses incurred, blah, blah, blah. Then I say, designer will refund any unearned or unused portion of advanced payments or retainers in an amount determined by designer in designer's sole discretion after deducting fees, reimbursables, etc. But I like them to know that if you're charging a flat fee and collecting it up front, but you also have the right to terminate the contract, you will be giving them something back, but you're determining what that's going to be. You're going to be fair about it, but this isn't up for debate. So it's a tricky argument to make, and a good, smart client is going to question that a little bit, but that's the ideal position to be in. Okay, so moving on to some bad faith behavior and things to see and to look for. So even if you're perfect, you're doing everything perfect contract, you walk them through it. They said they understand it. They read it. They read it. The client's a lawyer. Again, that should just be its own little category of bad clients I've heard. Okay. So even with perfect transparency, some clients they're just narcissists. We've all seen it. Okay. They're stressed out and they displace their stress onto you. They are thinking all or nothing. So you're either their best friend or they hate you, or they want to punish you. And I see this all the time. And I really believe it's a function of the fact that there's a lot of wealthy clients out there. And I think that they are win-lose people. Like some people, we all know these people. There's no compromise, no ability to compromise. It also kind of overlaps with narcissism. But these are the clients that are not wired for compromise. There's only winners and losers. You need to be strategic with your contract and just with your approach, and understand that there are people that move through the world like this. They're not all like you and me. Okay. So things you're going to watch for. These are the red flags. You've all seen them. Oversharing, questioning your expertise or every recommendation. You present your design and then they're like, nope, I don't like it. Can we do this? I mean, it's one thing to have an interactive experience. It's another thing to just be like, no, you got it all wrong. Or they completely change course from, I wanted this maximalist, now I want modern. I've heard that. Okay. Like we're just completely just kind of pulling your chain. Clients that are looking for a best friend, they're not professional. They're asking in the first initial conversations if you pass along your pricing, or do I share your discount? Do I get your discount? Look for people who have unstable personal lives and reluctance to sign clear contracts. So excessive redlining, or do we really need to sign something, like anything like that? This is the hardest part. Trust your gut and walk away. And I've got another slide that talks about the timing of that, because it's very hard to know when it's time, because we tend to all wait till you probably should have done it a few weeks earlier. Okay. So more prevention, setting boundaries with these people. You're going to talk clearly about compensation with confidence. You need to talk about it like a boss. Okay. You are not there for fun, and you're certainly not there to make new friends. You talk about how you make money. You talk about how your business makes money, because they're going to reframe it like it's two friends together. No, this is a business transaction. You've got to be able to articulate in the first page of the contract and in the first few words out of your mouth when you talk to these people about what you're doing for them. You want to be able to very concisely talk about the compensation. The new transparency we talked about, maintain some distance with these people. Do not become their best friend. Document everything. Reinforce that business relationship throughout the project. So following up in writing to certain things is one way to do that. And also know when to decline a client who, yeah, having the money is not the mark of a good client. Okay, that's not. There are many more modest clients, like financially modest people, that are going to be better payers, respectful, and just better clients. I've heard that consistently. So into like the contract. So now, you figured out, you got rid of some of the bad people, or maybe you took one that maybe you shouldn't have, but you'll keep an eye on it. The things that are really going to protect you, the parts of your contract that you may not look at. I mean, I've already mentioned that, but you probably didn't think of these in this combination, the way that I'm going to talk about them. The confidentiality, the idea of keeping the way that a dispute could end. Now, we're thinking this is all in the world of disputes. Okay. Knowing that if you come to me and I know that these things are in your contract, I'm very happy, because you're helping me get this done for you in a way that you're going to be terminated or have terminated their contract early, but it's not a bad thing because you've been paid. That's the goal. Okay. Not all contracts go to completion. Not all design projects get installed. That's okay. The law of contracts is built that way so that not all transactions can finish. Things happen, like somebody has to move, a family member dies, something happens. Think about a more positive way of a contract ending. You need to get out. Okay. So what's the best way for that to happen? Okay. So when there's back to the dispute for a second, confidentiality, control over dispute resolution method, keeping it private and making sure they can't trash you to put pressure on you to give them what they're demanding. Cash flow is king. You do not want to be their bank. You've heard this a million times. You've got to have as much money. You almost want to be working in advance. You get a retainer that you're holding towards the end of the project. You're doing flat rate, but you're making sure that if you're doing flat rate, you're making sure it's covering the work you're doing. You never want to be owed more than you can afford to lose. So get paid 100% of your product that you're ordering when they decide they're going to buy it. I see still language that's like 75% deposit due upon ordering, 25% upon delivery. I get that probably covers you, but you're leaving 25% on the table if that client walks, and you're stuck with their product. If they, maybe it's paid for, but you don't want to have to deal with it. Get paid for 100% of it. And again, the termination, like what we talked about already. I just said that. And again, the party holding the money usually is the party that wins the dispute, because if you are fighting over, say, $75,000, I'd much rather have you be the one holding the client's money and deciding if you're going to give them a $15,000 refund rather than having to be the party sending a bill for 75,000 and hoping that they pay it. So your termination right, you need to know when to when to run, okay? And the ideal situation, the ideal time to terminate is something's coming apart, okay? It's a very difficult skill, but it's a learned skill. There's going to be a point where you're going to say, I've seen this before. Don't delay the inevitable. And the best time is like when you're cash flow positive and you're in the right, but this client is kind of, starting to trend towards being one of the bad ones. Terminate. You've got everything stacked in your favor. The other piece of this is making sure that your contract really backs up what you're about to do, because you have to have that right in the contract to terminate for cause. We talked about this limitation of liability clause. That's another provision. These things in your contract are the shield. Okay, so let's pretend you do terminate your client. Now the client is mad at you. So now you get a legal letter saying they're trying to come at you. They're trying to sue you for terminating it. Well, your contract gave you the right. So this is when your contract now becomes a shield for you. It gave you the right to terminate. You're also going to have a limitation of liability clause that says, even if the designer really screwed up, didn't have the right to terminate, or screwed up on the design, like they really made an error, your liability, the amount you can be sued for under that contract, needs to be capped at the amount of the services you're providing. So they can't sue you for 2, 3, 4 times the amount of the contract. You want to be capped at what you actually got. You want a fee shifting provision saying that the losing party pays the legal fees. That prevents parties from bringing a case in the first place. And these are things like the lawyer reading it is going to turn to their client and say, hey, it's not going to be a judge reading this contract in most cases. It's going to be the lawyer persuading their client to just leave you alone. Leave them alone. The designer had the right to terminate the contract. I know you're upset, client, but leave them alone, because even if you moved forward, this contract's a shield to that designer. You can't do anything about it. The portfolio rights, I mean, if you terminate early, you're not getting photos, obviously. So you've made a decision to move away from that. And you want in your contract that the statement that the industry standard profit on goods sold is not negotiable. You don't need to say those words, but you want to act in a way that you are not going to just give away your product pricing, and you're not going to pass through your discount or share it. Make money on the product. Just make money on the product. Okay, so another slide on this. Warning signs. The client starts to be a little hostile. You start to get an email that's like looks a little sideways. They ghost you. They disappear for a few weeks. That means they're talking to other designers. You see the external stressors entering the project. The husband's business isn't good. A deal fell through. The client starts questioning your previous work you already agreed to. They start talking excessively to the builder and aligning with the builder. Payments are late. Late payments from a good paying client that's communication. That's communication from your client. And again, if they threaten you with social media, or if they even say something like, well, I was going to refer you to so-and-so, but that's like a reverse threat. It's like, it's a passive aggressive way of threatening you. Act quickly. Don't hope it gets better, because when you're in this phase, it's not getting better. So, all right, reality. What happens when you get that letter? You get the nasty letter from the client or the lawyer. Very important slide. I wrote this slide this morning because this is like the reality. I get phone calls all the time like this, or an email or an Instagram message. And the client, the designer is just so upset because they know what they did for that project. So you get a nasty letter. We call it a demand letter. The end of it says, my client demands X amount be returned no later than February 15th, 2026. you are panicked. You feel sick to your stomach. First of all, you're like, who do I even call about this? Do I write the response? What do? Do not panic. This is a dance. Okay. As a lawyer, I can tell you there's a dance here, there's a process. That letter is a demand. It's called a demand letter, but it's really an invitation to negotiate with them. Now, this is when you have to make sure you choose a lawyer that has a mind towards negotiating and resolving the issue and not just going to court. And you have to interview your lawyer and make sure that that is who you're working with, because not everybody has those skills. Not every lawyer has those skills. A lot of them they do want to fight. Okay. But you really want one that's looking for a solution. Okay. So you're going to, before you even call a lawyer, you read the letter, you think about it, you talk about it with your loved one, whoever, your spouse, your partner, talk about it with your business people. And first ask, well, what happened here? Okay. Like, what happened? Why did this fall apart? Then go back and read the letter again and see if the client or the client's lawyer has pointed to something specific that you didn't do in the contract. I will tell you, I read these letters all the time, and the letter is usually a list of complaints from the client to the designer, but nowhere do they say that, designer did not follow what they said they would do in section 5 of our letter of agreement. No, they're just saying, I really don't like the way that the designer designed the closet. It does not work properly. I have to, reach behind something to get to this. It's not functional. They didn't meet their standards. But these are things that were, they're like subjective, basically. There's a lot of subjectivity in a lot of these letters. So when you get a letter like this, read it and look for the objective thing you were supposed to do in that contract. If they have not been able to point something out like that, is the person writing the letter just upset? Did they have buyer's remorse? What happened here? Then you have to ask, am I holding enough money to be the one to decide to give a partial refund, or do I need to send an invoice and hope that they pay me? What happened here? Are they firing me because they don't want to pay the last invoice? Are they asking for money back? Read the letter and see what they're looking for. Does my contract back me up? Very important. This is where it comes in. And also, the ideal situation is that not only do you have a perfect contract, my ideal situation is you have a perfect, meaning you have the things I said: termination for convenience, liability cap, no refunds on fees, all those things we've talked about. You have that. It's signed by both parties. Believe it or not, I've seen many situations where it's signed by one party. You have those things, you're holding the money, and you have an insurance policy, and your insurance would back you up. Though that's the ideal, like, picture yourself as a warrior going to the battle completely, covered with armor. Okay. That's the ideal situation. I see Helena coming in here. I know I'm running over.
Hello. Yeah, no, that's okay. I was just jumping in to say that, yes, we kind of realize we're getting close to 2, but we don't really have a time limit. We can keep
Okay.
recording. It's not going to shut down on us.
Well, I have a couple like filler slides at the end, so we're
Yeah,
almost
yeah.
done. So
Yeah, I know. I was kind of following along. So yeah, I'll let you
yeah,
keep going
yeah,
and I'll jump back in after. But we just might lose some people. But as I said, it's
no
being
problem.
recorded, and so they can jump back in and finish watching it
And you have
afterwards.
my
So
slides. You can
yeah,
share them with
yeah,
anyone after. There's
absolutely.
a few more little points here.
Yeah,
So
perfect.
so the thank you. So the answers to these questions when you read the letter, like, just don't panic. Don't panic. The answers are going to help you to determine what's your response and what leverage do you have. When we talk about leverage, we mean who can force the other party to do something without going to court. Because we have to remember, nobody actually wants to go to court. The only one who wants to go to court is a client with unlimited resources who wants to just hurt you. Okay. And that is one of the archetypes we talked about. And that does happen. Okay. And by the way, when that happens, what I talked about, like having everything lined up, including insurance, that's your ideal defense to the client that's trying to hurt you. Okay. That's really the only way that you can win. If a client launches litigation against you, it's going to be a battle of who's got the deeper pockets, sadly. Okay. And usually somebody caves because they're sick of paying lawyers. Okay. But if your insurance policy's in play, the insurance premiums you've been paying hire the lawyer and the lawyer's paid for. So now you have a level playing field. Strategic response. Most of these fights get resolved through negotiation. So not arbitration, not mediation, negotiation between the lawyers. So the important things to think about, and I've got 2 slides on this. Okay. So I'm going to flip to the next one in a second. The bold language here, fighting on principle. So many designers are like, I refuse to do this because it's not right. That's a personal and emotional reaction. Your goal is to think like a business owner and saying, I need to resolve this and move on. And I need to figure out what my losses are, move on, and get my next client. So the settlement versus fight decision is, like I just said, they are unlimited resources. It's not worth your time or energy to spend time on this. You have a position of strength because you have a good contract. So your lawyer is put into a good position to push back on whatever the demand is. And we know how to do this. We know how to kind of put that pressure on, but you got to have a good contract, and it preserves your ability to go service your other clients and get more clients. The only time that you are fighting and going to court and enforcing your contract aggressively as the one doing the suing or writing the letter or making the claim, you have financial reserves, meaning you're holding their money. You have an insurance policy, your contract is strong, the cash flow is protected, or on top of it, in your state, you might have the right to file a lien on their project. So if you haven't been paid and you want to use the contract to go collect payment, if you can file a mechanics lien on their house, like for example, in the state of New Jersey, I know I've just recently looked at this law. If you've done anything as a designer that's created an improvement to their house, you can file a mechanics lien on the property at the town hall, and it prevents that homeowner from using the equity in their home for anything, for refinancing or anything like that. That's a strong position to be in, because the minute that client gets served with a lien, they're like, shoot, what do I do to get rid of this? And the answer is they have to pay you. So there's a series of things to give you what we call leverage, power in these unbalanced disputes. So wealthy, entitled client with small business owner designer, that's not a level playing field. The only way you can level it is the things I've been telling you: hold the money, good contract, have the ability to terminate, no refundable fees, confidentiality. That's like the magic potion to give you, just get you at the same level playing field. These are things to keep in mind. As you're going through the contract, you can stop work if they stop paying you. You should have language in your contract that says you can hold their fully paid for product if they're not paying your hourly invoices. You can hold it. Did they buy the stuff? They may have bought the items, but truly they're not performing their contract, meaning they're not paying your hourly invoice. So you're going to hold delivery. That's a very, very strong piece of leverage. Use termination strategically. You have to really protect your reputation, because I've seen businesses completely have to fold because of excessive Google reviews. So keeping everything private as possible is very important. Non-disparagement clauses and confidentiality clauses, and keeping disputes out of court. Working with legal counsel and insurance. So you're gonna make sure that you have a good relationship with an attorney. Okay. You're going to make sure, just somebody that, like, look, if you are calling me and the first time I'm talking to you is because you've had the dispute, you just got this letter, I now have to learn your business and learn about you and figure out if I believe you or them and all of that. I'd much rather kind of know you. And then when a problem arises, I already have kind of vetted you in my head. So I know, I'm like, oh, this person has this problem. That's too bad. Let me jump in and take a quick look. It's very hard for a lawyer to take a quick look when they're learning about you at that same moment. Plus, you're not putting your best foot forward. You want to meet these people, build a relationship. Usually costs nothing to just make an introduction, but do it early when you're when your business is slower, start assembling your team. Okay. Make sure you have a good accountant too, and get an insurance broker for your insurance. Don't just buy a policy online. And then build a resilient practice. There's a ton of resources out there for this, but plan for this because these are what we call contingencies, things that are probably going to happen. You hope they don't happen. Have a rainy day fund set aside for these terrible situations that could happen just in case. So, what are you going to do? You're going to review your contract. You're going to make sure the cash flow is favorable to you, termination's favorable to you. Really look at the way you communicate with your clients at the beginning. Be confident. You can do this. It's scary, but it's much less scary to have a conversation up front about how you're paid than have to deal with the demand letter, the response, and all that stuff. And the takeaways. You are going to build stronger relationships by being upfront like that. And it creates a better legal position for you if the relationship fails. I can tell you this, if you have a fight with a client and you can say, hey, don't you remember when I sat down with you? We did a page turn of your contract. We met at that coffee shop. We had a nice conversation. I was telling you about this. I gave you an example of why we don't do returns. I gave you an example of this. You don't remember that and you're looking eye to eye with them. It's very hard for them to deny that happened. You want to see the other side nodding that this is what we talked about. So that's what you want to do. You can't control the bad faith clients who have unlimited resources. You can control your way of communicating, your contract, your business structure, how you respond, and your emotions, which are, the client's not the only emotional one. You are too. So that is basically that. So these are my two logos. You see this all over Instagram. Just so you know, Design Council is a new business venture I have. It's a bunch of templates and monthly training, kind of like this. Estela Law is my legal practice. They're totally separate. So if you see me out there with multiple websites and things like that, that's what that is. And then as a thank you to Studio Designer and Mydoma, I have a code for discount for the first year of Design Council if anyone's interested. I'm not trying to do a hard push on that, but it's there for you. And you can reach out to me in any way. Again, that's me. And thank you. Thank you for having me. And I'm sorry I went over.
I think it's great. I think you jammed again so much information into that session.
I'm
And
so
I
sorry.
feel
I
like
didn't leave a ton of time for Q&A. What
that's
I
okay.
propose is I'm happy to take a couple questions, but I'd be very happy to take your questions and actually write up some answers for them. So, and then
Okay,
share it
great.
with you. So as a follow-up, if that's of interest, because I definitely didn't reserve 10 minutes. So,
That's all right. Well, we'll answer a couple that did pop in,
okay.
and as we get into those, I'm just going to launch a quick poll. And if you are interested in hearing from Wendy directly, or if you're interested in learning more about Studio Designer or Mydoma, just you can answer that quick poll there. And yeah, so the first question, so this one actually came in the chat because somebody's screen froze and they just wanted to hear a little bit about the cost plus transparency issues. If there was a couple of sentences to summarize that.
So yeah, I will respond more about that. But the issues I have with cost plus, I mean, look, a lot of people do it, right? But maybe if you're hell bent on doing it and it works for you and it has worked and you've had no issues, I'm not telling you to change your business, but I want to help you come up with some language in your contract that says, listen, we do it this way, but that doesn't mean you're getting every one of my invoices. Okay. Like it's going to be presented in an invoice and let's come up with some language about what's reasonable. Like if a client asks you to present all your invoices, maybe we come up with an audit provision that says, look, if you want that, you've got to give me this number of days notice and you're going to pay for my time to pull all that information. That's a compromised position. Because when they are realizing, oh, I got to pay for you to produce that, maybe they don't want to do it at that point. So this is what I mean. You're not going to fire them. You're not going to sue them, but you want to disincentivize them from coming at you to put pressure. Because that's what they do. They're going to look through your contract for all the things that you need to do for them. Because these contracts, the beauty of them it's very much like you're just designing and they're paying you. They have to do everything. Like you're doing the work and you're getting paid. And a lot of things are like, I'm not doing this. I'm not taking a return. I'm not responsible for contractors. I'm not responsible for the performance of this fabric. I'm not, yeah, there's a lot of like, I'm not. So these clients are looking for what you do have to do. So you want to nip those in the bud. Like read it with a critical eye for like you're the homeowner. Like, what can I get from this designer? So,
Okay.
and try to, nip it. What else do we have?
So there is a few questions about insurance and coverage, but I'm going to
Okay.
jump into this one first, just because then maybe we end on this because there is a lot of
I will
insurance
take a
related
whole list of them.
questions.
Like, I don't know how to grab
Yeah,
the chat, but if
yeah,
you capture
I
it,
can
I'm
definitely do
happy.
that.
And
Yeah,
I'll come up with a Q&A like that you can send out, and then I'll give you
perfect.
the code and all this stuff from my site.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So this one is what happens if a disgruntled client does not honor a confidentiality clause? What recourse do we as designers have?
Well, this one's interesting because, like I keep saying, stay out of court, except in certain circumstances. Confidentiality is like its own little beast. Okay. In court, if you're going to go to court with any contract provision, the judge is like, well, what were your damages? How much were you harmed with a dollar amount? Okay. They want to know a dollar amount because you can't get back what happened to you, but the court will award damages. So you get money, right? With confidentiality, it's almost impossible to figure out the dollar value associated with whatever thing just got leaked, right? So the remedy typically is you can go to court and get like a cease and desist. You can go, the court will order, like almost like think of a restraining order, similar type. It's an equitable remedy. They'll go in there and say, you got to stop what you're doing. And it's a court order. So you can get a court order. I'm not going to say it's easy to get, but it's not a full court case. Like you go to your litigator. I'm not a litigator. You go to an attorney that goes to court like that. You write a cease and desist letter, and then they can get it enforced. So it's like an exception to the general rule of stay out of court.
Yeah,
And that can
awesome.
be written into the contract. Like there's certain things like that that do warrant that type of remedy.
Great. So do you want to touch a little bit on insurance coverage? The questions are a bit
Yeah.
varied, like
I'm going to give you a
recommendations. Yeah,
high level insurance. Okay.
yeah.
So what happens is you've got in your contract indemnification language, which covers personal injury, property damage. Like if you are on the site and you get hurt, like the homeowner's insurance covers that. Right? So the homeowner has insurance for physical harm and stuff like that, right? You have to have business insurance and you have to have E&O or professional liability. It's the same thing. So errors and omissions, professional liability. The general liability policy covers, again, personal injury, property damage. That's part of your business package of insurance. But the insurance policy that covers your mistakes as a designer is professional liability. That one is very important because if you're getting a nasty letter from a client, their lawyers are playing a game too. Because if their lawyer can say in the letter, you gave us a faulty design and it resulted in all this loss. You're now me as your lawyer. I'm saying, oh, faulty design. Do you have an E&O policy or professional liability? We can tender this to the carrier because they cover us for claims of faulty design. So if you really screw up, you want insurance for that. If you created a design that was based on wrong measurements, that is your fault. Okay. So you need insurance for things that really happen that you caused. Okay. That's professional liability. That's a really important one that a lot of people forego. Now, I've recently bought insurance for designed counsel because I just started it like 2 weeks ago. I've been working on it, just launched it, bought the insurance policy. It's so much cheaper than you think. Like everybody thinks insurance. I think my policy was like $1,500 a year for the business. And maybe I had a cyber policy. If you're running like an e-commerce store, you need to have something like that. But if you work with an insurance broker, they will tell you exactly what you need based on what you do in your business.
Right. So I think that's kind of all the time we have.
I'm
15
so
minutes
sorry.
over is not too bad. No, I think I've seen longer. So you're all good.
Okay.
But I will gather the last few questions that were in the chat. So and send them over to Wendy today so we can get them out when we send the recording and the slides, and you'll just get everything all at once, and that'll go to everyone registered. So I think that's really beneficial.
Yeah, I will definitely answer questions. And just again, like one shameless plug for Design Council, one of the things I'm doing as part of that subscription service is like Q&A. So I'm going to have my members ask questions like this, and I'm going to do answers like that because, a lot of times I find people reach out to me, they're like, I just have a quick question. And it's true. You just want to ask a lawyer a quick question, and you don't want to be charged $400 for a quick question. So it's like, I try to be active in Instagram chats, like wherever I see designers asking questions and everything, and like discussion groups, because of that. And it's like, this has been a great industry to me. And I think it's very important that we elevate this industry together because that's what's missing. That's part of this new transparency too, is that the clientele you serve does not get it. And I just see that there's a lot of gaps from the leadership of the industry. And so it's got to be coming from the ground up. It's got to be the designers doing the hard work of educating, because I have learned so much about what each of you do. And I'm constantly amazed at what designers do. So, good for you. It's a tough business. I'm amazed that you venture into it. And if I could help in any way, please let me know.
Blending that creativity and that business acumen is definitely a skill. So
Yeah.
thank
And
you.
maintaining like a good heart. A lot
Yeah,
of good-hearted
yeah,
people.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, okay, I'm gonna throw one more in there because again, I'm gonna summarize a
Sure.
few of these. People want to start working with you. So what is the best way to do that? Can they just do the
Shoot
email
me
you
an
from the
email.
profile?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't even put my email in there, but I could put it if I could figure out the chat. It's just Wendy@estelalaw.com. That's like my
There we
main
go.
email. So I will put it here so you have it. Oh, and by the way, I'm licensed in Connecticut, New York. I will be New Jersey soon and Utah, but because it is like contract stuff, I work with people across the country. So I don't go to court. If I were to go to court, I can't. I can't like in California or those other states, but I don't even go to court in Connecticut. So I do this type of thing and I work with designers everywhere. So I'm
Perfect.
happy to talk to anyone.
Well, I'm gonna drop it there. We're gonna be here for
Okay.
another hour. I know it because this is such a topic that I know everybody really likes to chat about, and everyone has a good example about when they might have needed a lawyer. So, on behalf of us and our entire team, Wendy, thank you for taking the time out of your day to jump in and chat with us
Thank you.
here. We at Studio Designer, we love partnering with industry experts like you to kind of bring that extra knowledge to our all of designers. Really doesn't matter if you're a studio user or not, we are here to help support the industry. And so thank you very much. And
Thank
yeah,
you. Thank you
we
so
hope,
much. Go hug your nice clients.
yeah, and
Bye,
hopefully we
everyone.
we see all of you guys at our next Work of Design Live webinar. Thank you very much.